Today I'm going to program the UV-82 radio for use on the amateur repeater bands 440 and 2 meters. And so let's get right to it. I've got the memory range set for 0 to 11, a total of 12 channels, 0 to 11. And the way you put that in, you just put the number you want there, hit go, and it'll open this up smaller or wider depending on what the number is you set. This is 0 to 11, so we'll go with that. Getting to the first channel, I'm just going to talk about the first channel because the rest of them, once you've learned how to do the first channel, are pretty much the same. First channel, you click on it right here on frequency until you get that little box, and then you can enter the transmit frequency of the repeater in there, or the receive frequency of your radio. In this case, it's 146.085. That's part of the standard amateur repeater band plan, and you need to get some information off the internet or off the local expert to have access to this band plan, so you get good frequencies in there. I'm not going to give it a name. Tone mode, I'm going to use tone squelch, and that will be sending CTCSS or PL tones both ways, transmit and receive. Any quality repeater in service will require a PL tone on the receive side, and it will return the same although locally generated PL tone on the transmit side, and that's to keep noise out of the repeater and keep noise out of your radio. The tones I've chosen are 146.2 hertz and 146.2 hertz transmit receive. I'm not using any digital codes, so I'm not doing anything with that one, or that one. Cross mode I've set for tone, and that indicates that I'm going to send tone both ways. Duplex, this particular frequency on the band plan is a positively shifted frequency. You have to check the band plan. Some are negative, and actually in Los Angeles, even the frequencies are the band plan is different in LA, but in Southern California. Anyway, getting back to here, this one I've set for positive. The choices were none, no shift, a negative shift, positive shift, a split shift, which could be a really big shift, and transmitter disabled. So this one is positive. I'm leaving it there. The offset on 2 meters is 600 kilohertz or 0.6 megahertz. This will be in a positive direction. So when you transmit, where'd my arrow? So when you transmit, you will transmit on 146.685, and the repeater will transmit back to you on 146.085. FM mode I'm going to leave on standard FM 5 kilohertz deviation, because the majority of amateur repeaters are still on 5 kilohertz deviation. And power, I'm going to put it on low because I'm working around the bench, but to use this repeater in a normal mode, you would actually put that on high. So, and that's your two choices, low and high. The rest of these are pretty much the same. I've also got some 440 stuff in here. I've used tone squelch and a same transmit and receive PL, no digital, tone. On 440 megahertz or 70 centimeters, the shift is always positive, and it's always positive to 5 megahertz. FM, 5 kilohertz deviation, and low power. I've got some digital here that I'm fooling around with, but I'm not going to talk about those. I'm still slightly confused. At any rate, that's it for the memory screen. Now I'm going to go through the basic settings on the settings mode. Clicking settings, basic settings, it landed there anyway. Okay, starting with carrier squelch level, I'm going to set it for 5, which is right in the middle of the dial, and that should give a comfort zone. If it's not enough, you can always go back in and adjust that up or down. Battery saver 1.3, that's what Baofeng set it for, so I'm going to leave it there. Backlight timeout, I'm setting it for 15 seconds. I just like the light. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to remove the beep Timeout timer, I'm leaving it for 60 seconds. For folks who like to talk too long, they'll get cut off, and they'll get, I think they get a tone in the speaker when they overtalk that particular timer. I'm going to leave the display mode A, which is the upper display, on frequency, and display mode B, the lower display, on frequency. These are my colors, and I'm sticking to them. You could change them to whatever is available there. You can make them all the same if you wanted, but I'm just leaving it like that. I've turned off the Roger beep, and here you've got a receive Roger beep, which I've also turned off. And you could actually use that beep for channel recognition if you wanted to, but I'm just taking it off. So that's it for the basic settings. Programming the advanced settings for repeater use. Once again, clicking settings and then advanced settings, and you get this screen. Starting at the top, Vox sensitivity. I'm not using Vox, so I'll leave that off. I'm not using dual watch, so I'll leave that not enabled. This doesn't do anything if this isn't enabled, so we'll just pass by that. Alarm mode, should you key up for over 60 seconds based on the timer back here, the timeout timer, I believe you will get a tone through your speaker and your transmitter will cut off telling you talked too long. Voice, this is the lady's voice that comes out of the speaker. I set it to English. This one, scan resume, is really an interesting one, and I learn more about it as I go. You have three choices. This one is just crazy. It's called time operate, and what it does, if your channel comes up, a frequency comes up, your scan will stop and it'll lock on that channel. And after so many seconds, it's preset in the firmware, the scan will arbitrarily start up again and make a circle around the scan list, provided it doesn't find another channel first to lock on. And it'll do that anytime you hold it up for about, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds, and away it goes. So that one, I don't know what the use is in that one. It's not the use I'm going to use. This one I like. It's okay. This is called carrier operate. It will lock on a frequency that you have in your scan package, and it'll lock on that, stop the scan, and if the CT-CSS tone is correct, it'll cut the audio through. However, it will stop on that scan regardless of whether the CT-CSS is correct or isn't even there. And so you can have just a birdie come in on your frequency, and it'll lock on that. The good news on this one is when the frequency goes away, this thing will count off about 5 or 6 seconds, long enough to hold up for a quick-paced conversation, and then it'll start scanning again. So I've chosen that one. Busy channel lockout, I'm going to leave that alone. That would keep people from doubling on top of one another, but I think I'm just going to leave that one alone. Automatic key lock, not going to enable it. Broadcast FM radio, don't need it, not going to enable it. This squelch tail eliminate, handy talkie to handy talkie. I'm using it because what it does, when you're up talking on a repeater and you drop your carrier from your walkie-talkie, you release the key, it immediately drops the CT-CSS tone, which removes the audio from the repeater and makes for a clean cutoff where they don't have to, where the squelch, the RF squelch noise doesn't pass through the repeater. And that's a good thing, so I'm going to leave that there. I couldn't see any difference in what these did, so I'm just going to leave them the way the factory set. I'm going to leave these two as the way the factory default is as well. Programming the other settings on the UV-82. To get there, I had to click the settings, left click to other settings, and I got this screen. There really isn't a whole lot to do here. In fact, the only thing I did do was change the power on message to Ed's HT because I happen to be Ed, and it constantly reminds me of that every time I turn on the radio. To have that happen, I did have to change this from full to message, but the radio would have worked fine either way. These have to do with limits on the VFO, how far you're going to restrict the VFO from going. I'm just going to leave it as the default and go with that. Programming the work mode settings. Clicking on settings, clicking on work mode settings, getting this screen. Display A gives you two choices. I don't know what they do. I haven't been able to figure it out. I worked with this quite a bit and I just cannot figure out what behavioral changes happen on the radio when you click that. So I'm going to leave it on A. This one, VFO MR mode, it is the equivalent of turning off your radio, depressing the menu button, and then turning your radio on with the menu button depressed, which changes it from the channel mode to the frequency mode. On this particular case, this only affects the radio right after you programmed it and the first time you turn it on. If you change it from the keyboard, then all bets are off on this one. But that's the way this thing will come up the first time you turn it on after programming. Keypad lock, leaving it off. MR channel A, MR channel B, these set the frequencies on the displays A and B, upper display, lower display, to the frequency that's going to show up, the channel that's going to show up when you turn on the radio right after programming. After that, once you start changing the display A and display B, and you turn the radio off, it will remember where it's at and come back on regardless of these two. So that these two seem to only affect it when you turn it on after programming. The rest of these, all the way down to about there at the bottom, have to do with VFO settings, power, shift, ID, bandwidth, blah, blah, blah. And being that I'm not worried about manually programming this radio or tuning this radio, whichever, for use, I'm just going to leave these where they are. And that concludes the settings programming on the UV-82. Just in case there's a question floating around out there, the question being, well, Ed, now that you've done all this crazy programming, how do we get this stuff into our radios? Well, here's the answer. First of all, with your radio turned on, plugged into your genuine Baofeng cable, plugged into a USB on your computer, you get your file opened up in the Chirp software, go to radio, upload to radio, and finally OK on radio, and it commences loading. And when this green screen is through, this green bar is through, and the radio resets, you've done it. You've got a radio that's programmed. As the Baofeng UV-82 can be programmed in various ways for repeater use for various reasons, I've included a few clips of various ways the thing operates after programming. And there's a multitude of ways of doing that. Some ways might be right, some ways might be wrong, but it is what it is. You put it together and then you use it to see how it works. Here's the radio that I just programmed on the repeater configuration that I put together. I'll turn it on. Comes to live. And as I said before, I programmed it to open up on the 0 channel and the 0 channel. And so there they are. Display A and display B are both in the 0 channel. If I alter that,
1, 2, 4, 5,
say to there, where I got 440.000 there and 146.085 there, which is the 0 and 6 channel, and I turn it off, turn it back on.
Channel mode.
It remembers that and comes back right to that point. Here's the program radio functioning. You can see that the A display has a little arrow on it, and it's the active display. The B display is not active and is doing nothing. If I key up with the 146.085 from another radio, then you'll see the 146.085 in the A display come live, and there's audio, and the little arrow is blinking. If I move it down to the B display, Give it the same frequency again. Got audio, but this time it's coming out of the B display. It's like having two unassociated radios to some extent. Okay, so if you have this radio in a non-scan mode, this is how it's going to operate. Right now, the B display is the active one, and the A display is inactive. So now I'm going to key up the A display, watching the arrow, and the arrow goes up, and it stays there. Okay, and it will hear out of there. Everything is fine. However, now the B channel is no longer with us. The B display is no longer with us. If I key it again on the B side, like that, the little arrow has now gone to the B side, which will now hear 440. Oh, there it goes. But the A side is now, A display is no longer active. So that's the way that functions. If you put one side into scan, in this case it'll be the B side because my arrow is down there and this is the active display. I'm hitting the star key for a couple of seconds and away it goes. And I go to change to my B side. One click stops it, the second click goes up, and now the A side is active and the scan has gone away. Now I can scan the top side.
Scanning begin.
The previous examples I showed was with the dual standby turned off, and now I'm going to turn it on and we'll see how that works. I'm going to go to menu, and I'm going to go to option number 7, 6, 7, TDR.
Dual standby. Confirm.
Dual standby on, confirm. So now I'm going to go back to the radio. I'm going to key the radio and notice that it's on the B receiver, little arrows on the B receiver. I'm going to key it up and we have activity on the B side. Now I'm going to key up the A side, 146.085, and you see the arrow moved up and now we've got activity on the A side and it stays there. If I go back and hit it with a 440, it goes down. But yet both of these are still active regardless of where the arrow went. So this I like a whole lot. I think that's really usable. Now if I put the radio, which is still on the dual scan thing, if I put it on scan, it'll operate differently.
Scanning begin.
Come on, you can do it.
Scanning begin.
Okay, the B side is now scanning. Okay, so I'm going to hit it with 146.085 with the frequency in the A display. It doesn't respond until it finds it in the B display. Note the flashing arrow. I release it, and because I'm on carrier operation mode, it'll start scanning here in a second. Now I hit it with a UHF frequency, and once again it finds it in the B side, arrow flashing. So there's a certain amount of leeway you have operating this thing and how you set it up as to how it will function for you. Okay, I've loaded a real honest ham repeater in here, 441.500. It's about, I don't know, 40 miles from me, maybe 45 miles up on a 4,000, maybe a 4,400 foot hill. And I'm going to key this thing and see if I can get into it. KB6DRN testing for PL. Be off in a second. Well, that was a lot less than perfect. It was through 3 walls and a tree, so I'm happy with that. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope that was helpful, and I'm still continuing to learn about this radio as I make these videos, so I enjoyed it. Hope you did too.